what I've noticed is every time we look at what type of fire suppression system they have, and to an outside perspective, that's not the first thing that I would think of when looking at a warehouse, but just wanted to get your thoughts on why it's so important.
Yeah, fire, there's the obvious component is the safety
Yep.
component part of it, right? So if there was a fire, can the fire be extinguished? But so many executives who are well intentioned and super experienced are less aware of it because you don't have a problem until like you have a significant problem
Sure.
sometimes. You just continue to do what you've always done. And part of the problem is that go, who's in charge of fire protection and how is it enforced? What are the rules? Who are the enforcers? And oftentimes that's the county fire authority. And then they come by and check the building
Yep.
every once in a while. Sometimes you have overworked and understaffed departments that don't come by very often. The part that people complain about is then when the county's low on money, then they come around all the time looking for money as if they are speed trap enforcing police officers that are just looking to give tickets. And I don't think it really works that way, but those are some of the funny things that people think as they're dealing with fire
Yeah.
authorities. And then if you're permitting a bunch of construction, that's another opportunity to have permitting and approval processes through the city and with the fire agency. And so if you aren't doing any construction, like you still will need a business license and a certificate of occupancy, and that usually will necessitate an inspection. But some people are moving into buildings that don't do a lot of construction. And the issue is if you do not have sprinklers, or more likely you have sprinklers, but they're an older system and they're less efficient and they're not sufficient to extinguish whatever fire could be caused from whatever product you have in the building, then what? And so then what
Right.
is the fire authority says you cannot rack those products past 12 feet, which is called high pile storage, anything that's above 12 feet. And so if you have a building that's 24 feet tall, 32 feet tall, if you can't stack above 12 feet, where's all that product going to go? You'd have to
Sure.
store it on the ground. And upgrading fire sprinkler systems can be like hundreds of thousands of dollars, usually not millions, but and usually not like tens of thousands, but it's expensive enough where it can be cost prohibitive for a lot of people. And then, of course, like taking everything out of your racking and putting it on the ground is terribly inconvenient and B, just not, that's not a sustainable business practice, of course.
Yeah.
And then living through fire sprinkler upgrade with all of your stuff stacked on the ground and workers and is terribly disruptive and costly. And an example that's infrequent, but frequent enough, we've come across it probably 10 times, are people calling and saying, hey, the fire marshal showed up. They saw that we're stacking flammable materials too high. They won't allow it. I have a huge problem. And fire sprinkler consultants get these calls all the time. We as brokers get these pretty frequently, and it puts people in a real pickle. Seasoned pros are very cognizant of this, but it still happens so frequently that you can't not address it and be doing like justice to the job of helping people like make those types of decisions.
It's definitely a side to building design that is like much more complex than I would have ever imagined. Just today, I was at a building and I learned that there are multiple different types of sprinkler systems that have like different pressures and are wildly different in pricing. And yeah, it is very interesting to learn that this is something to be really cognizant of for anyone making the decisions and redesigning their building.